Okay, I'll just present 1 second. So you can see the screen, right? Yeah. Okay. Um, so today's session is on multidimensional poverty index, like I had mentioned last week. Okay. So what is multidimensional poverty and how it is calculated? And recently there was a survey, I think last year, the government released some data. So we'll be going through an overview of that. Okay. And in fact, the whole report is available in the Niti Aayog website. You can have a look if you're interested. So, the contents for today, the first we'll have, as usual, the answers to the previous week's questions. Then, brief look on the sustainable development goals. You'd have seen this already, and I think even in your course and the other problem solving sessions also you'd have seen this. But this is important because the first goal, the sustainable development goal, the first target is no poverty. So that's what we are talking about today, right? Then we'll go into what is multidimensional poverty index and what dimensions and indicators are used for India's multidimensional poverty index, right? Then the methodology, and then what is headcount ratio, I'll explain. Okay. For each indicator in India, and state-wise headcount ratio. So headcount ratio is basically the percentage or the fraction of people who are poor, multidimensionally poor. So that's what it is. And then the map of India's multidimensional poverty index. I'll show you that, and then the question and answers for today. Right. So from last week, the first one we have, why is circular economy more sustainable than a linear economy? So, essentially, what is circular economy? That approach denotes all measures to reduce material usage and extraction. So, it could be repairing, like you have an appliance, let's say a mixer grinder or something, and then it goes bad. You won't just discard it and buy a new appliance. You will repair it and keep using it. Okay. So, and that's a generally good practice to do, even if you are, even if you have a lot of money, because um, of course you will either discard it or give it to someone else. If you give it to someone else and they are using it until its useful lifetime, that is also a good practice. Okay, but discarding it is not, because then it ends up in a landfill, and new appliances have to be manufactured and so on. So that is not a good practice. Okay. And yeah, so recycling and other MSW management practices lead to much better utilization of waste, and they reduce the amount of waste reaching the landfills, like I just said. So all of these measures are all of these statements are true about a circular economy, or why circular economy is more sustainable than a linear economy. That is, the circular economy ensures efficient resource usage by avoiding extraction of new materials, reuse and repair, of course, and then the uh, circular economy principles lead to better health and sanitation due to lesser amount of waste reaching landfills. All right. The second was identify the cycle. Okay, so there are two cycles. Technical cycle, which denotes the use and reuse of technical nutrients, that is inorganic materials, like you have metals, you have paper, plastics, and so on and so forth. Okay, and the biological cycle is the extraction, utilization, and return of the organic nutrients, like anything organic, like for instance, you have biodegradable substances, right? So all of that. So the nutrients have to be used and then returned back to the earth so that new plants or new ecosystems can thrive. Okay, so in this you have the first is anaerobic digestion of garden waste, which comes under biological cycle. Then remanufacturing of internal combustion engines at the end of its useful life, which is again, which is a technical cycle. Repairing a broken mixer to prolong its life, again technical cycle. And extracting and melting scrap metals from components, again technical cycle. So this is the answer, option D. Okay, I'll move on to a pointer here. Okay, third is, what is systems thinking perspective? So systems thinking, essentially you have a system that you are analyzing, but you cannot solve the problems incurred in that system by only thinking about that system. Okay, so you need to think out of that. Like, there are allied systems. For instance, like I gave you the example of your house. If there is a power cut in your house, you cannot solve that problem by just simply sitting in the house, right? Or just the solution does not exist in your house itself. Okay, so you need to call your electricity board and ask them what happened. So that kind of approach. So it indicates a holistic approach. Holistic means like overall, like you need to think about the entire system that is connected to your system, right, to solve any problem. Okay, so this is the answer, assessment of associated extended systems to identify possible improvements in performance. Next one is so the option one was circular economy approach is an end of pipeline solution. So what is meant by end of pipeline solution? So these are measures taken to reduce waste at the end of product's useful life. So you take any product, you're using it, and then you're discarding it at the end of its lifetime. Okay, and then after that you are like extracting the scrap metals, or you're trying to replace the plastic, recycle the plastic and so on, okay, in that particular material. So that is, of course, that is one of the circular economy approaches, but it is not exactly circular economy itself, because circular economy, it's an entire approach wherein you change the entire design of your system itself to ensure that the life is prolonged and you minimize the amount of waste. So in the current economy, where we have linear economy, if you try to apply this end of pipeline approach, which you can, like we saw in Indore, like the municipal solid waste management, but it's going to be incredibly hard. Okay, because there we have so much of waste being generated, so we need to minimize that first, and then we have to ensure that everything is recycled, or it comes back into the loop, essentially. Okay, so the right answer is, the circular economy tries to minimize waste by prolonging useful life of technical equipment. Okay, and so that is the true statement. So linear economy. So the take, make, dispose philosophy is of linear economy that we follow right now. Okay. Number five was, recall the case study of MSW management in Indore, and which of the following measures indicates a circular economy approach. So you have the fruit and vegetable waste, and they are producing biogas to run buses. Of course, that is also a circular economy approach, because they are reducing the amount of biodegradable waste ending up in landfills. Burton Bank, wherein if you have a big function or something, you can rent these vessels, or cutlery, basically your spoons, forks, and all, from this bank. And what happens is, normally during these functions we buy paper plates or plastic spoons and so on. Okay, so which is harmful for the environment, and they end up in the landfill, and it's one time use only, right? So it is disposable. So that can be avoided. So again, it is minimizing the waste, right? By so it's minimizing the plastic and paper waste. Then selling polythene briquettes to irrigation pipe manufacturers, so which reduces the need for new plastic So if you're using recycled plastic, it's reducing the need for new plastic to be manufactured essentially. So all of these three are circular economy approaches. Number six, identify the circular economy approaches from the following. So let's look at it one by one. So exchanging old gadgets for new when it malfunctions the first time, right? So if you're buying a mobile and let's say within 2 months there is some issue with the mobile, and it's under warranty, maybe it may be or may not be under warranty, that's not important, but the thing that what you'll do is you'll go to the service technician or whoever it is, the mobile phone shop, and then get it repaired. You won't just exchange it for a new mobile, because that's although the mobile phone is expensive, so you can't afford to do that. But even for any appliance or any gadget, that should be done. The When it malfunctions, it has to be repaired. Okay, we should not discard it and buy a new gadget. Second is disposing old mobile phone in the garbage at the end of its useful life. So this is increasing the e-waste, the electronic waste, which is incredibly hard to process and bring back into the loop, because like in the next option we have the semiconductor circuits. So extracting semiconductor circuits from the old mobile phones is going to be hard actually. Okay, but in this option, yeah, I've also written like the discarding the rest of the parts, right? So that is also not a sound circular economy practice, because if you're discarding the rest of the parts in the garbage, then again it is increasing the amount of waste. And the circular economy practice is about reducing the waste, right? So none of these are good circular economy approaches. Which of the following players help make circular economy a reality? So I've given you for three options. First, oil and gas companies. And so oil and gas companies, they drill in offshore oil wells or onshore oil wells. So they are extracting resources out of the earth, but not returning much. Okay, same goes for steel and cement manufacturing companies. Um, they pollute a lot. In fact, the greenhouse gas emissions from these cement and steel companies are a lot. Um, just to give you a ballpark number, for steel to manufacture 1 kg of steel, 2 kgs of carbon dioxide is emitted. Okay, so there is a very famous joke that is running in these circles, saying that they are manufacturing carbon dioxide and the byproduct is steel. Okay, it's that kind of thing. But you have cobblers, tailors, and repair technicians, wherein they extend the or prolong the life of your shoes or your clothes and your gadgets, your electrical appliances, and keep them in the keep them functioning for a longer time. So you have lesser waste. You are minimizing the waste that is reaching the landfills, and so for a longer time they are in use, and then the waste are minimized. So these people are helping make circular economy a reality, right? And it one was the discussion about circular economy approaches. So I've just made a list of things that I felt which are happening in real life that we notice all around us, but it just goes right by us. We don't think of it as a circular economy approach, but we still do it. Okay, and it's a great practice. So we should continue doing all these. The first is I gave the first one was I gave you this example of this old clothes which you donate to the less fortunate, right? So that is one. Then the agricultural residue which is going as animal feed, like rice straw or wheat straw, what you do is um, you give them starch water, right, from that rice straw, and wheat straw, and then they give you manure, right? So that is a very good example of a circular economy. Selling old milk packets and paper to the recyclers, right? Soaking, yeah, this practice I've seen in Tamil Nadu. So my mother used to do this, and right now we don't do this much because, yeah, I mean, we cook fresh rice every day. So what happens is, if excess rice is cooked, and what we do is that surplus we just soak it in water, and then in the morning we drain that excess water, and then we have that rice with curd. So it's also nutritious. It saves so it saves wastage. Essentially, we don't have to waste that cooked rice, and also it is also a very good cooling agent. So it brings down the body heat, right? So then we have, yeah, utilizing second-hand books from siblings or cousins instead of purchasing new books. And in continuation to that, we have libraries where you go and borrow books. You don't have to purchase new books, you're borrowing books. So we're saving a lot of paper, right? And paper come from trees, as you know it. So we're saving deforestation. So it's a whole chain that we're talking about. Okay. Then renting furniture for functions, like for instance, you have a family function or something, and then you rent these tables and all where the guests can sit and eat. Okay, or you rent plastic chairs and all that. In situ composting of biodegradable waste, this we have seen already, and the case of Indore also, and even in other states this is happening. Okay. Yeah, printing on both sides. How is this a circular economy? So because, see, if you print on both sides of a paper, so essentially you are reducing the paper that you require by half, right? So if you need, let's say, 10 pages, you can use 5 papers, or you can use 10 papers. So which is better? So obviously, using 5 papers is better, right? So this is a great practice. So printing on both sides, it saves a lot on paper. And getting torn shoes and old appliances repaired, and torn clothes stitched. See, like we've just seen the cobbler, the repair technicians, and so on. And efficient public transportation, because this reduces the requirement for private vehicles like cars, bikes, and all that. So if public transportation is good, then you may want to use this more. Instead, like metro is a very good example of efficient public transportation, and it's convenient also, okay, for a lot of people. So now we come to the multidimensional poverty index. But before that, do you have any doubts in circular economy, or would you like to discuss something that about these points that I just mentioned? Anyone? If there are no doubts or questions, I'll just proceed to. Okay, all right. So I'll just proceed to MPI, multidimensional poverty index. Okay. So the sustainable development goals. So there are 17 goals, right? 17 sustainable development goals, and around 160 something. I think 169 targets or something among these 17 goals. So I'm not going into that details. That you can just have a look. You can just search, and then you'll get all these targets. What these targets are. Okay. And yeah, the first one is no poverty. So all these goals have to be achieved by 2030. So we have about 8 years to achieve these targets. Okay. And these were adopted in 2015. So at the start we had like 15 years. Now we're in the decade of action. That's what the UN is calling this decade of action, from 2020 to 2030. Okay. So the first target is no poverty. That's what we're going to talk about today. Then we have zero hunger. So, and good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities. So this means it could be class based, caste based, or gender inequalities, or even rural versus urban. So there are lots of inequalities between urban a person from urban area and a person from rural area. So those inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, that is your marine ecosystems, life on land, that is your terrestrial ecosystems like your wildlife and so on, peace, justice, and strong institutions and partnerships for the goals. Okay, so these I'm not going into the details here. So today we'll be focusing on this with slight and slightly on a few others like hunger. Sorry, not hunger. Rather, health, education, sanitation. These all will come under this. I'll just show you how. Okay, but before that, we'll just check the targets of this goal one, that is no poverty. So eradicate extreme poverty. Okay, so they have defined the poverty line as anyone living on less than $1.25. That is, I think it's around. We'll just calculate how much that is in rupees. 1.25 into, I think today it's 82 something, right? 102 rupees or something. So consider it as 100 rupees per day. So this is the global poverty line. Okay. So anyone earning less than 100 rupees per day is considered as poor. Okay. So that is extremely poor. So that needs to be eradicated. And this is the point that we are going to discuss about: reduce at least by half the proportion of people, men, women, and children, living in poverty in all its dimensions. So I was talking about multidimensional poverty index. So this point, it talks about in all its dimensions. So what are these dimensions? We'll just see. Okay, according to national definitions. So for each country, it will be different. Okay, these dimensions, what we are defining. Okay, the others, let's say, implement social protection systems. Okay, and equal rights to economic resources as well as basic services, ownership, control over land and other forms of property, inheritance and natural resources. Okay, and financial services and including microfinance. So if someone wants to start a business or something, he or she should not be discouraged because he or she is poor. Okay, so that's what this means, the microfinance and financial services essentially. Okay, so reduce their exposure and vulnerability to climate related extreme events. So this is very important because in countries like, if you consider, let's say, Bangladesh. Okay, every year they are devastated by floods, even in India of course, but Bangladesh, it's more extreme. Okay, around the Sundarbans region and in those areas, right, they are like devastated by floods, and these people, they have to be relocated somewhere. So and every year they go through this. So and all this is because of climate change. Okay, and I think I had mentioned in one of the previous sessions that if this continues in on this path, we'll be having around 100 crore refugees, climate refugees. Okay, we can see war refugees and all going to Europe and going to other places, but imagine climate refugees because their country is going, you know, like, let's say, Maldives may even disappear in another 100 years. So they want to buy land here in India to relocate all their people. So something like that. Okay, so this needs to be eradicated. Okay, and significant mobilization of resources from a variety of sources. Okay, and through enhanced development cooperation in order to provide adequate and predictable means for developing countries. All right, and to end poverty in all its dimensions. So this is what we'll talk about today. and then create sound policy frameworks at national, regional, and international levels. Okay, based on pro, poor, and gender sensitive development strategies to support poverty eradication. All right. So what is multidimensional poverty index? So, you know what poverty is? Poverty is basically which we defined over here as $1.25 or 100 rupees per day. Okay, but that talks only about money. Okay, monetary resources. So if that is income. Okay, so if someone is earning less than this, then he or she is poor. That's what we say. Okay, but that's not the case actually, right? So even if someone has like decent amount of money, if he or she is living in like I said, if someone is living in those areas which are affected by climate change, then they are not rich in the technical sense. Maybe they may be rich in the technical sense, but they are not actually rich. So we need to measure other deprivations, so something that they are lacking. Okay, so in terms of, let's say, education or access to basic health care in addition to income. So this multidimensional poverty index, it captures complexities and persistence of poverty by highlighting additional deprivations experienced by the poor. Okay, so in addition to income, we have to check for how their health is, how how are they in terms of education and other deprivations we need to check, like sanitation and nutrition and so on. Okay, so what are the dimensions? So we talk about multidimensional, so we need to define what our dimensions are. So India's multidimensional poverty index has three dimensions. Okay, health, education, and standard of living. Okay, these are the weights, that is we are doing a weighted average kind of thing. I'll just explain. So uh, each dimension is given a weight of one third. Okay, 1 by 3 plus 1 by 3 plus 1 by 3, it adds up to 1. Okay, so you measure this indicator and then multiply it by the weights over here. Okay, and then you do it for all indicators and then add them up. That gives you like a final weighted score or kind of thing. Okay, and these are the indicators like nutrition, child mortality, antenatal care, that is after what is antenatal care? It is after the childbirth, essentially. Okay, the care for the mother and the baby, essentially. Then in education, you have years of schooling and school attendance. Okay, then in standard of living, you have cooking fuel. We talked about this in the Energy Plus initiative, if you remember this. Sanitation, drinking water, electricity, housing, assets, and bank account. Okay, so these are the three dimensions, and there are about 12 indicators. So what is the methodology that they are using? So there is something called the dual cutoff approach. Okay, I'll explain what that is. So you have these indicators, okay, these 12 indicators. Let's say, for instance, years of schooling. Okay, I say that the threshold value for any child above the age of 10 is at least 6 years of schooling. So suppose there is someone like who's 12 years of age, who has only 1 year of schooling, or who has not had any schooling at all. He or she has not gone to school at all. Then that means that he or she is deprived in that indicator. Okay, that is the years of schooling. Okay, so you can see in this figure here. So this person, if he has 6 years of schooling, that means he is not deprived. Okay, if he does not have 6 years of schooling, then he is deprived. So that is what is meant by deprivation cutoff. So for each indicator, you have to define what is your threshold value. Okay, for each indicators. And an example is this: the threshold value for schooling, number of years of schooling, is 6 years. Okay, for anyone above the age of 10. So Then if a person is not deprived, you set the value to 0. If the person is deprived, set the value to 1. Why do we do this? Because we have to count the number of ones that we have. Okay. So each time we cannot say, okay, count the number of people who don't have 6 years of schooling. Instead, if you assign the value of 1, you can just simply count the number of ones, right? Or you can add them up. Let's say there are 6 people out of, let's say, a population of 10 that have not gone to school. So that means there will be 6 ones and 4 zeros. So if I add the entire column, I'll get 6. So then I'll say, oh, there are 6 people who have not gone to school or who did not have 6 years of schooling. So that is why we are doing it in a binary way. Okay. So 0 or 1. Next is poverty cutoff. Okay. First was deprivation cutoff for each indicator. So poverty cutoff is overall, you have all these 12 indicators. You have done the yes or no, the ones and zeros like you did here. Okay, for each indicator. So this is for one person. This table is for one person. So you check for that person whether he has satisfactory nutrition. If he does not have if he does not have that, that is if he is deprived, then you set the value to 1, otherwise 0. So likewise you do for all indicators, and then you have the weights. The weights are from here. This weight, okay, you put them here, and then you calculate the deprivation score, which is the value multiplied by the weight. That is 1 multiplied by 1 by 6. That is 1 by 6. 1 by 6 is 0.16. The second is 0 multiplied by 1 by 12, which is 0. Similarly, you have here 1 multiplied by 1 by 6, 0.16, or 1 multiplied by 1 by 21, so 0.05. So you calculate for each indicator what is the deprivation score for an individual, and then you calculate the total deprivation score, which is you add up all these 12 values. Okay, so you have 0.05 plus 0.05 plus 0.16 plus 0.16. The rest are zeros here, so that gives you a value of 0.42. This is the score. But you need to set a threshold for each individual, each person, right? So I'll say that if the score is above 0.33, that means he is multidimensionally poor. Okay. Why do I say this? So if he is deprived only in one indicator, let's say all these are zeros, that means his whole score will be 0.16 only. Okay. So the only place where he is lacking is nutrition in that case. Okay. So that means that I don't have to actually care about anything else. I only have to care about nutrition. So that becomes a single dimension. It is not a multi-dimensional issue now. But if it is more than 0.33, that means, see, if you have two different dimensions, you are already reaching like 0.32, 0.16 plus 0.16. Let's say only these two are ones and the rest of them are zeros. You're reaching at 0.32. So I define it as, let's say, 0.33. If it is above that, then that person is deprived in more than one indicators. That means he is multidimensionally poor. Okay. Then what I do is, if a person is multidimensionally poor, I set the value to 1. Again, the same method that you followed here, right? So now you do for this entire table for each individual, and then you set the value to 1 if the value is above 0.33. That is, if a person is multidimensionally poor. Otherwise, you set it to 0. So now we are counting the number of people who are multidimensionally poor. Okay. So step 3 is head count ratio. So what is head count ratio? So what percentage of people are poor? So we calculated here. We can calculate how many people are poor. We are counting the number of poor people by setting this value to 1. That is, if this is more than 0.33, you set it to 1, and then count the number of ones. Okay. what percentage are poor? Essentially, how many people are poor, that is this q is the number of poor calculated from step 2 divided by n, which is the total population. So for instance, if the population is 1000 in, let's say, a village or something, and 212 people are multidimensionally poor, that is, you set this to 1, right? If this is more than the 0.33, you set it to 1, you count the number of ones, and that number of ones that came out to 212 people, then this ratio is 212 divided by 1000, that is the number of poor people divided by the total population, or 0.212. So that is 21.2% of the population is multidimensionally poor. So that is the head count ratio. The next is intensity of poverty. So what is this? So now we know how many people are poor, what percentage of people are poor, but how bad is the poverty among them? So earlier, let's say we saw that 100 rupees per day is the threshold given by United Nations, right? So if someone is earning 98 rupees per day, he's still poor because he's below the poverty line. If someone is earning, let's say, 10 rupees per day, he's also poor. Okay. So how do you make the distinctions between them? So because the person who's earning 98 rupees and the person who's getting 10 rupees will be given the same benefits. Okay. The same policies will be targeted at them. Okay, but the amount of deprivation is different, between the two, and that is why we need this kind of a measure. So we need to see how poor are they, so how bad is the poverty among them. So how do we see that? So we calculate the average deprivation score of the population. Okay, so that is C1, C2, C3 at deprivation scores. So in step 2, this is the deprivation score, the total deprivation score that you calculated in step 2. Okay. So, so for one person it's 0.42, another person it can be zero point 0.5, another person it can be zero point 0.6, something like that. Okay. You add all that up for the entire population and then divide it by the total number of poor people. This one, like number of ones that you counted, right? So here it says that 212 people are poor, right? Multidimensionally poor. So you calculate the score, so the total deprivation score for 1, 2, 3, and so on. So let's take this 1000 people itself. So there will be 1000 values here divided by 212. So that will be the average deprivation score. So in a village, I will check what is the average deprivation. If the average deprivation, let's say, turns out to be zero point 0.5, and I compare with another village with a deprivation score of 0.34, cutoff here is 0.33, right? So I can say that the second village that I saw is very close to the cutoff value. So little bit of impetus for them will bring them over to this side. Okay, so they'll be empowered. But then the village with zero point 0.5 score, they need a lot more policies to be targeted at them. So I hope you understood this, why we are doing this intensity of poverty. Okay. The fifth is the poverty index, the multidimensional poverty index, which is nothing but H multiplied by A. You just multiply these two and then you get the poverty index. One second. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at the head count ratio. So that is how many people are poor, right? Or what percentage of people are poor in India for each of the 12 indicators. Okay. So you can see nutrition, for instance, about 40%, around 38 to 40% are poor. Child mortality, it's very good actually, it's very close to 0%. Maternal health, again, more than 20%. Years of schooling, more than around 15%, I would say. School attendance, again, around 7%. Cooking fuel, yeah. So here around close to 60% of people are poor over here because, like we saw in the Energy Plus, right? Most of the people are using firewood, and they have not switched over to LPG yet. So once they do that, this number will come down. Sanitation. This is a very big issue in India, as you know it, and the government is taking steps to improve sanitation also, so through providing toilets, so you have the ODF, open defecation free status for villages and for towns. Okay. And electricity, which is pretty good, because we have achieved 100% electrification of villages. We are yet to achieve electrification of households. So once that is done, then this will also come down, this number will also come down. So this is around 15%. Drinking water around 12%. Housing, yeah, around 45% of the people are multidimensionally poor. So that is, that is quite a huge number. Okay. Assets, that's pretty good, 15%, and bank account around 10%. I think this is because of the Jandan Yojana and all these measures that a lot of people have bank accounts now. A lot of people are using UPI, okay, Google Pay, Phone Pay, and all these apps. A lot of people are using. So, and this number will come further down as we go along, right, with the digital revolution. So here's the state-wise headcount ratio. That is what percentage of population is poor for each state. So you can see more than 50%. So Bihar has performed really badly, unfortunately, 50%, and followed by Jharkhand around 42%, Uttar Pradesh 37-38%. And among the states, you can see, I think, let's see here. I think, yeah, Kerala and Goa. I think, yeah, Goa is around 3, 4, 5%. Okay, Kerala is actually much lower. I think it's around 0.67%. I think, not more than that. Goa is also more closer to, I think, 3%, 2% or something. Okay. And Jammu and Kashmir has done pretty well, very close to zero actually. And Ladakh, of course, the unified Jammu and Kashmir. Right. So here's the map. So this is the multidimensional poverty index map. This was the headcount ratio. Here's the MPI map. That is, you calculate the indicators. So you can see Bihar over here in dark red. So which is a very high poverty index, right? And you can see the dark greens over here: Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Goa, Punjab, okay, Delhi, and Himachal Pradesh, right? And Mizoram, Sikkim, okay. And the light greens also, like you have Manipur, Tripura, West Bengal, and all of these states, like the southern states, and Maharashtra, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, J&K, Haryana, all of these. Okay. These states, the central states over here, have not performed really well. I hope really that some measures are taken to improve the situation in these states, right? So we'll come to these questions shortly. Before that, if anyone has any doubts or anything you'd like me to discuss again, or regarding the methodology itself, if anyone has anything to any inputs or something, you can just share it here. Anyone, any doubts, questions? So if there are no doubts, I'll go into the questions for this week. Okay, I might have to come back to the slides again because the questions are highly conceptual this time. right? So, okay, I'll just go into the questions, right? First question is, what is the first sustainable development goal? So this is very an easy question. A, life on land. B, gender equality. C, reduced inequalities. Or D, no poverty. You have answers? Yes, absolutely. Anyone else? No? Okay. The first sustainable development goal is no poverty. Okay. Second one, what is multidimensional poverty index? A, a measure that evaluates lack of monetary resources among people. B, a measure that analyzes deprivations such as education, health, and standard of living, that is, in addition to the monetary resources. C, a measure that evaluates standard of living among climate refugees. Or D, all of the above. Do you need me to read the question again, or do we have answers already? Yeah, 1 second. Okay, so multidimensional poverty index. So your options are a measure that evaluates only the lack of monetary resources, that is income. Okay, so we spoke about that 100 rupees per day, and so that kind of thing. B, a measure that analyzes deprivations such as education, health, and standard of living. Okay, that is in addition to the income. This measure analyzes deprivations such as education, health, and standard of living. C, it's a measure that evaluates only the standard of living among climate refugees only. Okay, that is people who come from other places because of climate disasters. Or D, all of the above. So do we have answers? Are you sure? Okay, think about India's multidimensional poverty index. So what did it include? Like I just showed you that entire thing, right, with the 12 indicators, the three dimensions and 12 indicators. You don't have to worry about the 12 indicators, just remember the three dimensions. What were the dimensions? Do you remember, or do you need me to go back to the slide? I can go do that. If you remember that, you'll get the answer. Absolutely, yes. So now it's right. Education, health, and standard of living, right? So because we spoke about years of schooling, and in health we spoke about nutrition, standard of living, like sanitation, infrastructure, and all that. Okay, so this is the answer, right? So this is in addition to income. So yeah. But what is the dual cutoff methodology? So we spoke about this dual cutoff methodology. A, measuring deprivations followed by multidimensional poverty of individuals. Okay, so you have the deprivation cutoff and poverty cutoff. Okay, or B, deprivation cutoff only, the measuring deprivations only. C, measuring multidimensional poverty only. Or D, none of the above. Do we have answers, or do you need me to go back to the options again? Sure. Do you need the options again? Okay, I'll read out the options again. The dual cutoff methodology. Okay, so you have two cutoffs, right? You have the deprivation cutoff and the poverty cutoff. So what is deprivation cutoff? Deprivation cutoff is the for each indicator. Let's say years of schooling. So if you remember that diagram that I showed, that 6 years of schooling, whether someone has 6 years of schooling or not, and then you set the value to 1 or 0 according to that. Okay. Poverty cutoff is for all 12 indicators for a particular person. For all 12 indicators, you calculate the total deprivation, and then there is a cutoff like 0.33, and then you see if that person has crossed that cutoff into the negative side. Okay, so that's what is meant by the first option. So deprivation cutoff followed by poverty cutoff. B, only deprivation cutoff. C, only poverty cutoff. Or D, none of the above. So here the answer lies in the question only, but I would see absolutely. Okay. So you're doing both deprivation cutoff as well as poverty cutoff. So that is the dual cutoff methodology. Right. So identify the two statements. A, deprivation cutoff is the threshold indicator value for which each indicator above which a person is classified as being deprived. So that means that, okay, you have the deprivation cutoff. So you see whether that person has exceeded that deprivation cutoff, and if he has, then or for instance, okay, it does not have to be above. I need to change the wording, but okay. For instance, if 6 years of schooling is your cutoff, okay, anyone that does not have 6 years of schooling is deprived. So that's what this option means. B, poverty cutoff is a threshold weighted value above which a person is classified as being multidimensionally poor. So you have the 0.33 cutoff. So if you cross that, the total deprivation score for all 12 indicators you calculate, and if you cross that threshold, then that person is multidimensionally poor. So that's what this option is. C, total deprivation score is the sum of individual deprivation scores. Remember that table where I wrote all the 12 indicators and then saw for each indicator whether they are deprived or not, and then wrote down the values 1 or 0, and then the weights, and then the deprivation scores, and then calculated the total deprivation score, which is just adding up all these values. Okay, so which is obtained by multiplying individual weight, individual value and weight of each indicator. Okay, value multiplied by weight. Okay, so that is this option, or D, all of the above. Is fourth, right? Okay. Do we have answers? Do you need me to explain again? Perfect. Right? Because the deprivation cutoff is essentially, like I told you, 6 years of schooling. Okay. So 6 years of schooling. And if you cross that threshold, like if someone has lower than, it does not have to be above. For some indicators it's above, some it's below. So I will change this wording. That's not an issue. Okay. So 6 years of schooling, anyone is below that is considered as deprived. Poverty cutoff is you have that 0.33 value and then you cross that threshold into, let's say, 0.35 or 0.36, then you are multidimensionally poor. Then deprivation score, which is a sum of individual deprivation scores. That is, you have all the indicators, and then for each indicator you calculate a deprivation score, which is nothing but the individual value, that is the binary value, whether they are deprived or not. 1 0 1 0, you saw that in the table, multiplied by the weight of each indicator, 1 by 6 or 1 by 12, 1 by 21, and so on. So you obtain the individual scores and then add them all up. Final score you have the total deprivation score. So in that example, it was, I think, 0.42. So all these three statements are true. Now, couple of calculations you have. Calculate the headcount ratio. So what is the headcount ratio? It is nothing but the percentage of poor, right, among a population. That's all. Okay. So the population is given 8559 and 1344 people are multidimensionally poor. So calculate that. Can someone calculate and give me the answer for the fifth question? I hope you understood what headcount ratio is. It's just the percentage of poor people among a population. Okay, that's all. So here I've given that 1344 people are poor. Okay. So calculate the headcount ratio. The total population considered is 8559. Given that 1344 people are multidimensionally poor. So what is headcount ratio? It is nothing but the percentage of multidimensionally poor people. That's all. How many people or what percentage of the population is multidimensionally poor? That's all. Okay. So can someone calculate? So there are 1344 multidimensionally poor people out of a population of 8559, 8559. You can use your calculators, you don't have to calculate this by hand. Okay, I just need the answer. Okay, did you understand what headcount ratio is, or do you need me to go back to the slide and explain to you that that and the I see? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely right. Why? Because there are 1344 divided by 3559, which gives you 0.157. Multiply that by 100, so you get 15.7% of the people are multidimensionally poor. So that's it. You just have to calculate the percentage here. That's it. That is what the headcount ratio means. Okay. Next, intensity of poverty. Okay. So what is intensity of poverty? So essentially you're calculating on an average, you know how many people are poor. You know what is the percentage of people who are poor. Okay. But how how bad is the poverty among them on an average? So that is what is meant by intensity of poverty. Okay. So the deprivation scores are given. The total deprivation scores that you calculated using the table are given for 10 people. Okay. All you need to do is calculate the average for this 10 people, these 10 people. So that gives you the intensity of poverty. Okay. Do you get what I mean? So I've given you the individual deprivation scores for 10 people. Okay. Calculate the average. That's all. Okay. So the numbers are zero point 0.5, zero point 0.6, 0.34, zero point 0.4, zero point 0.4, zero point 0.4, zero point 0.8, 0.38, 0.45 and zero point 0.5. Okay, for these 10 people. If you need to see the numbers again, I can go back. I hope everyone understood what this intensity of poverty means. Okay, so for each individual, you have a total deprivation score that you calculate using that using the table. Okay, the ones and yeah, I'll go back. Okay, and So this is the individual total deprivation score. Okay, so this point 0.5. So there are 10 people. For each of these 10 people, there are individual deprivation scores. Okay, so what I want you to calculate is the average deprivation score for these 10 people. So that gives you the intensity of poverty. So on an average, how poor are these 10 people? So that's what this means. Okay, so these are the numbers, the 10 numbers. There are 10 people. Calculate the average and let me know. Yes, absolutely. Okay. So you just sum these up and then divide it by 10 and you get 0.477. So this means that, okay, your threshold cutoff is 0.33. Okay. And the average poverty among these 10 people is 0.477. So this gives you an idea of how much you need to reduce the score, right? So around 0.11, right? Sorry, 0.14, around 0.14 or 0.15 actually. So from this you get an idea and what measures need to be taken in order to reduce the score. So that you get an idea from this one, right? Okay. Calculate the multidimensional poverty index for India given the headcount ratio is 25% and intensity of poverty is 47.13%. So how do you calculate the MPI? It is nothing but H multiplied by A. A is the intensity of poverty. So H into A. So please do that. So 25% and the intensity of poverty is 47.13%. Do we have answers? So multidimensional poverty index is calculated using the formula H multiplied by A. H is the headcount ratio and A is the intensity of poverty. So headcount ratio over here is 25% and the intensity is 47.13%. Okay, do we have answers? D is yes, absolutely, absolutely right. So anyone else? Yeah, perfect. So because it's just 0.25 multiplied by 0.4713. That's all. Okay. All right. So yeah. So we are at the end of this uh, lecture, and I just wanted to ask you guys if um, did you receive any communication from NPTEL saying that okay, this is the last week, or is there any next week? Do you have to attend this session or something? See, anyway, there is a session on Tuesday that you need to attend. Okay, so because my eighth week is complete now. Okay, so that's why I was just. I mean, if you're coming even next week, if you're going to attend, then what we can do is we can just do a revision of all these 8 weeks. That can be done because I don't want to, uh, prepare any new content, right? Okay, what I'll do is I'll stop the recording. 1 second.